Hello, and thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and always, we've got a lot to cover today, so let's jump in and have our panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their specialty. So we've got Karen and Ella in one, so why don't you guys start? Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm Ella Maxwell. I'm a Tazewell County Master Gardener. And in my garden right now, I am trying to move some of my perennials that are doing very well into some other areas, kind of organizing. And with that organization, I'm replacing some plant tags and doing some basic cleanup.
Okay, all right. And Karen, tell us a little bit about you and what you are doing in the garden right now.
Hi, I'm Karen Ruckel, and I'm a horticulturist here in Central Illinois area, and I love perennials and shrubs. And in my yard right now, I'm tackling my annual issue in my yard. I have a flame Amur maple, and that tree sends out gazillions and thousands of little seedlings. So right now, I am weeding out of all my flower beds. In the lawn, it's not a problem. They get mowed off. But in the mulch beds, I've got to hand weed them out.
Yikes. So that sounds like a full-time job.
But it's kind of just the flush of spring. A whole bunch of them come up, um, and then the rush is kind of over. Just a few here and there later on.
Gotcha. Okay. And as you've noticed, we've got a new face on the show today. So Sarah, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where we can find you outside.
Hi, I'm Sarah Vogel. I'm the horticulture educator for Illinois Extension. I covered DeWitt, Macon, and Piatt counties. Um, and so right now in my professional position, I'm answering all the questions that gardeners have coming in. And in my own garden, I've already put out my cool season crops. I'm going to wait until after that Mother's Day last possible frost to put out my tender vegetables and annuals and things. And, just the regular cutting back perennials. I've done a little planting of some trees and shrubs in my yard and generally just trying to enjoy the sunshine.
Wonderful. Well, welcome aboard. We are so glad to have you. New information, new skills. So thank you very much for sharing your time and talents with us.
My pleasure.
Yes. So as always, first round always goes to show and tells. So we'll go to the ladies, the 2-in-1 duo. To start, Ella, what did you bring today?
Well, actually, this morning I took a drive down to Bloomington, and on the way back, we pulled over because everyone always wants to know what is that purple flower that's blooming in those fields. So these are fallow fields before the corn and beans go in, and this is henbit. And it's a winter annual, so it probably germinated late last fall and then goes through the winter. And then when the conditions are right, it really begins to grow rather quickly. And it's flowering now because it has to complete its life cycle. It's an annual, and it'll make more seed and reseed itself. And so these little purple flowers, it's just a carpet of purple, and it's so pretty. You'll find it in the home garden, and it's pretty easy to just pull up. I mean, again, hand weeding is difficult in a mowing situation. It's going to disappear by the middle of summer. So I don't know that you would have to really treat it with any type of herbicide. Another winter annual that we see too is the little chickweed. And this one we're going to see for sure in the flower garden. It has little white flowers, and it's a prolific seeder. So again, you can prevent this in the flower garden with a fall application of a pre-emergent. But again, the pollinators, especially honeybees, will get the pollen. It's a really pretty purple colored pollen that you can see on their legs as they go into the hive if they've been foraging on henbit.
And so you pulled those out of like a farm field? Is that where you're
Yeah,
saying? Or
yeah. Next to the side of the road, I went down the ditch and said, "Oh, I have to have something for show and share this afternoon."
your
So
dedication to Mid-American Gardener is just
there you go.
incredible. Thank you. Okay, Karen, what'd you bring?
Well, we talked a couple months ago about, making sure that through the winter months you check any of your cannas or dahlias or bulbs that you're storing for the next year. And so now we're getting to that point where probably everybody's itching to put them out. But I think the soil is still going to stay pretty cold. But I would start going and getting them out right now. And this is a good time to start checking. This guy didn't make it. He's dead. It's all black, it's shriveled. So that rhizome didn't make it. What's really something that's good is this one does have a plumpness by an eye, and there's actually a little sprout of growth here coming up. So that rhizome is healthy. And then here's another one that you can see more the thickness of like when you dug it up last fall. And so what I like to do right now is to go through them, and then I'll take a just an old flower box, the skinny ones that are horrible for using outside because everything dries out in them really quickly. And I'll put my cannas in that with some soil and start to kind of pre-germinate them or get them to flush to growth with rooting. Because that way, if it gets too cold, I can move them in. I can put them in the warmer area of the yard. You can quickly, put them where you need to put them as weather changes. And then when the soil's warmed up nicely, then they're already sprouted and you can plunk them out.
Now, I wanted to ask, and I think I asked this last year when we were putting everything away. I keep my cannas in big pots. So, is it okay or do you need to dig them up when you have them in the pots to check for their health in the spring? I move them in, but if they're in containers, do you still need to check them out and kind of make sure everything is looking good?
Well, the thing I would be worried about is there too much already in your pot? Because typically your canna is very prolific in how it grows and the rhizomes and little side plants it'll put off. So that your plant by May 30th, you're overcrowded already in your pot. That's my main concern with how you overwintered yours.
Okay.
So if you were having trouble keeping it watered by the end of last summer, you'd probably be, if all your rhizomes overwintered, you're not going to make it easily through this next year because you're just not going to have enough soil to support all that growth.
Okay. Okay, so I need to get in there and see what's going on and maybe do some dividing, it sounds like.
Probably, because like I said, it's probably full enough as it is right now.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to Sarah. What show and tells do you have today?
So with the enormous increase in houseplant owners and plant lovers all across the board last year, I thought bringing a houseplant would be kind of fun. I know we have some photos too, but this is a silver squill, or some people call it leopard spots. Lettiboria socialis is the scientific name, and it's got really great spotted foliage. And on the underneath, it's kind of a purplish burgundy color. It's native to South Africa, so it wouldn't survive our winters here in Illinois, but it does make a really good house plant, and that they're relatively easy to maintain. They do, as you can see from this, the pictures, it doesn't bloom, so there is some kind of reproduction going on there, but it can also be asexually reproduced by the bulb-like structures in there, and they're pretty easy to divide as well. It's a plant in the hyacinth and grape hyacinth family. And so if you notice the flowers on them, it is kind of reminiscent of a grape hyacinth.
Very cool. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Can you plant those little tiny blooms?
Yeah, you can take one of the bulbs and plant them. You would treat them like an annual here if you wanted to plant them in ground. I've typically kept mine in a container. And, if you're going to keep them as a house plant, that's fine. They do really well with bright indirect light. And typically what I do with mine as a house plant is take it in the kitchen, a clean kitchen sink, and spray it with the sprayer, knock all the dust off so it can photosynthesize. But then in the summertime, I'll take it outside and keep it on my porch where it'll get maybe a couple hours of direct sunlight at most, but it usually likes bright indirect sunlight.
Okay. So, from snake plant to something really complex, I guess, where does this fall in the maintenance department? Is this something for beginners or is this something, for your more seasoned plant owner?
I have not found it to be finicky. In fact, I'll show you, I have two of them here. You can see one is a little bit fuller, but these both were split from, it was one plant that was actually very, very pot bound in a little 3.5 inch round. And so they kind of like to be pot bound. They'll take a little neglect. I use the drenches between droughts method of watering. So they don't like to sit in water. They like to dry out completely. So that makes it pretty easy. It'll show you quickly if it's getting too much sun by brown spots and a little sun scald on there. And they don't take a lot of fertilizer. In fact, they don't like a lot of fertilizer. So in the maintenance department, it's a relatively easy one.
Okay, that's what we like to hear, especially the new folks starting out. You don't want to get discouraged too easily. So
That's
great
right.
news. Okay, thank you. Karen, you have another show and tell, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, what'd you bring us?
Well, I just, in talking about what we're doing right now is I've been starting a few seeds, which I am really not a seed starting person. I'm just too impatient. But I did decide to do some parsley because why not? And like a silly nut, the package of seeds was probably about 10 years old. So I thought, oh, seed germination decreases as time goes on. It's not the seed goes bad. But I thought, oh, these really probably won't germinate. So I just threw a whole bunch and there's way too many plants in here. So these are not going to probably wait until time to plant them out from the cell packs. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll divide these now and give them a little bit more space to grow them before planting them out in the yard. And I'll probably give half of them to Ella because I've grown too much.
She already knew it was coming. She was pointing as you were talking. You love when your friends overplant or overbuy because you know it's coming your way too. So we get to benefit from that. So when you're doing that, Karen, when you're dividing those, you're not going to put them straight outside, right? You're going to another pot before they go outside.
Yes. And just because I'm a little bit leery looking at the extended forecast that those 40-degree nights, I'm just not so sure. A lot of these young little seedlings, and especially if you've torn them apart and they've got to reroot, don't want a lot of adversity with weather. So yes, if I kept these whole, maybe I'd put them outside and they'd probably do okay once I acclimated. So acclimation, that would be going outside in a shady location on warm days, coming in the cold night, going back out, coming in, kind of getting them used to the wind, higher light. But like I said, because these are so pot bound already in the cell pack, I'll divide them and then, have them ready then to hopefully start transitioning, maybe in about 2 weeks, starting to get them used to outside.
Okay. And I think you brought up a really great point, Karen. If we could take a moment to talk about these temperatures this week, by the time this airs, we'll have been past the really, really couple of cold nights that we're having. But, and feel free, ladies, just kind of to throw out some ideas. But for those of us who maybe have put some things outside that shouldn't have been, what advice do you have to get through this week and these last couple of weeks? And I didn't plant anything, but I did drag out some great big pots of, like, I had a couple bananas that were starting to, they were in the garage, and I thought, well, let's get them some light. So I'm going to have to put those back. I know. So anything else there, help us out with some tips and feel free to just jump in wherever, ladies.
Most of our perennials are going to be fine. If you have fruit trees that are blooming that you're concerned about, you may consider covering them with row cover bed sheets or something like that. I would, again, wait to plant any of those tender annuals and even some of our vegetable plants. But a lot of plants are tougher than you think. Some of the things that are going to be blooming soon, like lilac, and that will probably be fine.
Yeah, and I brought home for Karen and for myself some black nursery containers, 5-gallon pots, and I do have some hostas that are up pretty high. And with these freezing temperatures, there's a good chance that there might be some leaf damage as they unfurl. So we're going to put black pots over some of the tallest ones. And then I also have some floating row cover and some sheets to use on some others. And you can use cardboard or even newspaper. You just don't want to use plastic. And we'll see the consequences of plastic, I think, in one of our other questions that we'll get to a little bit later with the moisture underneath of plastic.
Mm-hmm. Karen, anything else that you wanted to add on there?
Well, I thought I would add, you see this a lot of times with pansies because typically you plant them out early and they get cold snaps. And I meant to look it up to refresh my memory, but after a cold snap, you'll usually see the foliage start to go a little purpley. And I always get my peas mixed up, phosphorus or potassium. I think it's potassium that they're a little deficient in after a cold snap, so that the foliage goes a little purpley kind of color. So it would be really beneficial if you do see a little odd coloring of the foliage to just mix up maybe half strength of some fertilizer and give them a little fertilizer in the next couple weeks as the temperatures warm up.
Is there anything to say about if you've got pots that are close to your home that can kind of get that, I don't want to say like radiant heat from your house, but does it matter if you've got things on a porch or that are close to your house? Will they fare better or worse or anything there?
Well, that depends how much wind they catch.
Okay.
How much wind and how much light exposure
Right.
exactly?
Usually it's better, but better safe than sorry. And the ones closest to the house are probably the easiest to protect.
Okay.
Even maybe just bringing them up, from the front porch into the garage, take that extra step.
Okay. All right. And let's go ahead and go to that question that Ella referenced. It's number 23, DJ. This is a question from Karen Benner, and she writes in, I have a question regarding my seedlings. I planted heirloom cabbage and broccoli. They looked fine until I covered them with a plastic bag to keep the moisture in when I was away for a few days. When I returned, the leaves were wilted and curled at the edges. At first, I thought they were too wet. Then I wondered if they were diseased. Whatever it is, it spread to the basil and the hibiscus. Attached are pictures. Can anyone tell me what's wrong and if I should destroy these plants because they're diseased? So as we're scrolling through there, the ladies have pretty much identified what happened here. So I don't know, whoever wants to jump in and kind of share what Karen's seeing.
Well, what happens sometimes is that moisture accumulated on the top of the plastic bag, and it might have actually, the bag might have touched the plant most likely. And so what we're seeing is really not a disease problem at all. It's a scorch or kind of the heat, the greenhouse reflective energy, might have just scorched the top of the plants. And so as it continues to grow, we can see the new growth is coming on. They'll be just fine. No reason to destroy them. But that's one of the downsides sometimes of having that plastic on there that's not maybe firm enough and tall enough held above the plant material.
And that, when you're doing the hot caps or a covering or something, is that something that you should leave on during the day? Is that something that you should put on at night? Any technique there, that we should know about to prevent the scorching?
Well, I think the most important thing is that yes, if you can remove it during the day, that's good if the weather conditions warrant it. And that's why those floating row covers, they breathe, they don't trap as much moisture. Newspaper, of course, would absorb the moisture, but plastic, it doesn't. It just accumulates, and that's where the problem lies.
Thank you so much. All right, Sarah, we're going to go to you. This is question number 26 regarding tree bark falling off. Penny writes in, this has been going on for 2 years now. The tree still buds and has lots of leaves last year, but the bark is falling off. I don't see any bugs on the surface. Any ideas? So she sent in, I believe, some pictures of the bark. There we go. So Sarah, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's a little hard to tell what the species is, and she didn't make mention of it. And so regardless, bark coming off the trees can really be related to several causes. It could be, animal damage, insect damage, a lightning strike occasionally, though probably she would have known about that. There could have been some frost cracking issues going on. And though this doesn't look necessarily like a naturally exfoliating tree, keep in mind that there are some tree species that do that. It looks like she may have some insects going on in there. But then in saying that, we often find that insects are more of a symptom to a larger problem. So the tree could have been stressed over several years, maybe drought stress, maybe had some pruning done. It may have seen a couple non-detrimental diseases like anthracnose come through and affect it year after year. When we have those cool, wet springs, we often see anthracnose or tar spot, different kinds of fungal and bacterial diseases. So it may be part of a larger abiotic disorder that's then letting some of these smaller stressors come in, and then insects are kind of the last culprit that move in too. I have seen many trees heal over after they lose bark, especially I've seen sycamore heal over from losing a large strip of bark on there. So again, I couldn't quite tell what the identification of that species was, but just kind of wait and see, or look for more, cracking, oozing, or weeping of sap. Look for those insect populations. And of course, if you do find anything or have more questions, you're welcome to reach out to Extension. We'll try to help you diagnose it further.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
When you have, go ahead, Ella. Sorry.
I was going to say just one thing from the picture. Again, it's important for you to be able to identify your trees, because in my mind, I really believe that is a green ash or some type of white ash or something. And we can see those kind of engraving marks that the insect activity, and that could be from the emerald ash borer. And when they say that their tree is still leafing out, many times you get these epicormic shoots, or like it's kind of dead at the top, but down the trunk and the main branches, you start to see these leaves and these new branches form, but that's the last resort for that tree. So if she identifies it as an ash, then it probably is severely infested. When you see one from top to bottom, that could be even a lightning strike that's, popped the bark off, that kind of thing. But yeah, they can seal over, but I think she has an ash.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
One more question. Oh, somebody gonna say something? I don't want to cut you off. All right. So we're going to go to Karen with this one. Larry wants to know if he can transplant peonies from one place to the other. He says he's got 3 that he would like to move before they get any bigger, and enjoys watching the show. So I know a lot of, we're going out and we're finding things that are coming up. He wants to know if it's okay to move the peonies right now. So is that a good plan, good idea, or no?
Well, Ella and I were discussing that before we came on, and we were feeling that your peonies typically are more of a fall transplant perennial. So we would just say wait till fall. Now the thing is, if this is a situation where you don't have access to the plant, something's being done, an addition, construction, yes, dig up the plant, but we feel it's more of if you can, wait till fall.
Okay. All right, ladies, thank you so much. We have sort of run out of time. We've got about a minute or so left. Sarah, thank you for coming on board. Great to have you. And of course, Karen and Ella, the dream team together. We love having you. Thank you for sending in your questions. And thank you so much for interacting with us on Facebook. We appreciate all the messages. Hit us up anytime on our Facebook or Instagram, or you can send us an email to yourgarden@gmail.com. Make sure you send us lots of pictures so we can get the experts to diagnose what's going on in your garden. Again, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.